I never thought I'd be the one to step outside my marriage. Looking back, it feels like a slow unraveling. The kind where you don't notice the threads pulling until the whole thing frays. My husband and I met in our early 20s, right after college, when life still felt like it had endless possibilities. He was steady, reliable. The guy who showed up on time, remembered anniversaries without reminders, and built a life around routines that made sense. We got married in a simple ceremony at a local courthouse, then honeymooned at a quiet beach resort. No grand gestures, just us. And that seemed enough back then. We settled into a mid-sized house in a suburban neighborhood, the kind with manicured lawns and kids riding bikes after school. He worked as an accountant for a firm downtown, crunching numbers all day, while I taught high school English, grading papers late into the night. Our days blended into one another. Mornings with coffee and quick kisses goodbye. Evenings with dinner from the slow cooker and binge-watching shows on the couch. We had a dog, a golden retriever mix we adopted from the shelter, who became our unofficial child, since we decided early on that kids weren't in the cards for us. Too much uncertainty in the world, we said. But really, it was more about not wanting to disrupt the comfortable rhythm we'd found. But comfort can turn into complacency without you realizing it. Around our 10th anniversary, I started feeling this quiet itch, like something essential was missing. It wasn't that he was bad to me. He wasn't. He listened when I talked about my students' essays, helped with chores without being asked, and we still had sex regularly, though it had become predictable, like checking off a box. I loved him, or at least I thought I did, in that familiar way you love a well-worn pair of shoes. But there were moments when I'd catch myself staring out the kitchen window watching the neighbors' lives unfold, wondering if this was all there was. That's when I joined a book club at the community library. It was my attempt to shake things up, to connect with people outside our bubble. The group met every other week in a cozy room with mismatched chairs and shelves of dog-eared paperbacks. There were about 8 of us, mostly women in their 30s and 40s, discussing everything from literary classics to guilty pleasure romances. It was refreshing, a space where I could laugh freely and share opinions without the weight of daily domesticity. One evening, a new member showed up, a guy in his late 30s, with an easy smile and a backpack slung over one shoulder. He introduced himself casually, saying he just moved to the area for work and needed something to fill his evenings. He worked in marketing for a tech company, traveling occasionally, which explained his slightly rumpled button-down and the faint scent of airport coffee. We didn't talk much that first night. He mostly listened, nodding thoughtfully during discussions about the latest novel we'd read, a story about lost opportunities and second chances. Over the next few meetings, though, we started chatting during breaks. He'd ask about my teaching, sharing stories from his own high school days, and I'd find myself opening up about the frustrations of lesson planning and parent-teacher conferences. He had this way of making eye contact that felt genuine, not forced, like he was really seeing me. My husband knew about the book club, of course. He even encouraged it, saying it was good for me to have hobbies. But I didn't mention the new guy. It seemed harmless. Just friendly conversation. As weeks turned into months, our talks extended beyond the library. One night, after the group wrapped up early due to a storm warning, he suggested grabbing coffee at a nearby diner to continue debating the book's ending. I hesitated for a second. My husband was home, probably heating up leftovers. But then thought, why not? It was innocent, right? We sat in the booth by the window, rain pattering against the glass, and talked for hours. He shared about his divorce a few years back, how it had left him questioning everything, and I found myself admitting things I'd never said out loud. How my marriage felt like a safe harbor, but sometimes like an anchor too. By the time I got home it was late, and my husband was already in bed, the dog curled at his feet. I slipped under the covers, my mind buzzing, replaying our conversation. It wasn't until the next morning, as I poured cereal into a bowl, that I felt the first real pang of something unfamiliar. excitement mixed with guilt. But I pushed it down, telling myself it was just nice to have a friend who understood. Things escalated subtly. We started texting about books, then about life in general. He'd send funny memes during my lunch breaks, and I'd reply with anecdotes from class. My husband noticed I was on my phone more but chalked it up to work emails. One afternoon, after a particularly stressful day with rowdy students, I vented to him via text, and he suggested meeting for a quick walk in the city park to clear my head. I agreed, thinking it was no big deal. We met under the oak trees, the air crisp with fall leaves crunching underfoot. As we walked the winding paths, our hands brushed accidentally. Or maybe not. And neither of us pulled away. He stopped at a bench overlooking a pond, turning to me with that intense gaze. "You deserve to feel alive," he said softly, and before I could process it, he leaned in and kissed me. My heart raced. I kissed back, the world narrowing to that moment. Pulling away, I whispered, "This can't happen." But even as I said it, I knew I didn't mean it. Driving home in my mid-sized sedan, hands trembling on the wheel, I replayed the kiss, feeling a thrill I hadn't known in years. That night, as my husband snored beside me, I lay awake, wondering how I'd let it get this far. But the twist came the next day when I checked my phone. A message from him, apologizing, saying he didn't want to complicate things. I stared at the screen, relief and disappointment warring inside me. Just as I was about to reply, my husband walked in, holding a surprise bouquet of flowers. Wildflowers, my favorite. For no reason, he said with a grin. It was the first spontaneous thing he'd done in ages, and it hit me like a gut punch. Maybe our marriage wasn't as stagnant as I'd thought. Or was this just fate's cruel joke, reigniting the spark right as I teetered on the edge? The flowers sat on the kitchen table for days, their petals slowly wilting as a reminder of my husband's unexpected gesture. I tried to focus on that, on us. That weekend we went for a hike in the nearby woods, something we used to do more often. He packed sandwiches and water bottles, and we talked about mundane things. The leaky faucet that needed fixing, the neighbor's new fence. It felt normal, comforting even. But underneath, my mind kept drifting back to the kiss in the park. I hadn't responded to the guy's apology text yet, telling myself it was better to let it fade. Monday morning, back at school, I threw myself into work. My classes were discussing a unit on personal narratives, and I encouraged the kids to write about pivotal moments in their lives. Irony wasn't lost on me as I graded their papers, reading about teenage heartbreaks and family moves, while my own life felt like it was splitting at the seams. During lunch, I finally texted him back. No need to apologize. Let's just keep it friendly. His reply came quick. Agreed? See you at book club? The next meeting was awkward at first. We sat across from each other, discussing a memoir about resilience, and I avoided his eyes. But as the group broke into smaller conversations, he leaned over casually, asking about my weekend. I mentioned the hike, keeping it light, and he nodded, sharing about a work trip he'd just returned from. By the end of the night, the tension had eased and we parted with a simple wave. But friendly didn't last. A week later, after a rough day, parent complaints about grades, a staff meeting that dragged on. He texted, offering to listen if I needed to vent. I hesitated, then called him from the parking lot after school. We talked for an hour, me in my car, him at home. It felt cathartic, like releasing pressure from a valve. From there, calls became regular. Late evenings when my husband was watching sports in the living room, or early mornings before work. My husband noticed the shift in my mood, happier, more energetic, and attributed it to the book club. "It's doing you good," he said one night over pasta, squeezing my hand. Guilt gnawed at me, but so did the excitement. The guy, let's call him Alex, though that's not his real name, opened up about his past. A marriage that ended because of mismatched ambitions, how he'd thrown himself into work to cope. I shared my own vulnerabilities, feeling like I'd settled too young, wondering if I'd missed out on adventures. One evening, after my husband went to bed early with a headache, Alex and I met at a quiet coffee shop on the outskirts of town. It was supposed to be just talk, but as we sat in the dimly lit corner, our knees touching under the table, the air thickened. He reached for my hand, tracing circles on my palm, and I didn't pull away. "This feels right," he murmured. And I believed him in that moment. We left separately, but later that night, in a motel parking lot halfway between our homes, we kissed again. This time with urgency, hands exploring. Driving home, heart pounding. I convinced myself it was a one-time slip, but it wasn't. We started meeting sporadically. Quick lunches in his car during my free periods, stolen afternoons when my husband was at client meetings. Each time, the guilt hit harder afterward. But during, it was electric. Conversations that delved deep, physical connection that made me feel desired, in a way I'd forgotten. At home, things were ironically improving. My husband suggested date nights again, like when we were newlyweds. We went to a local theater for a play, then dinner at an Italian place with checkered tablecloths. He was attentive, laughing at my jokes, and for a fleeting second, I wondered if I could end the affair and recommit. But then Alex would text, and the pull was magnetic. The twist came during one of our meets. We checked into a nondescript hotel room for the first time, nerves buzzing. As we lay tangled in sheets afterward, he confessed something that floored me. He'd been seeing someone else casually before we started, but ended it because of me. "I want this to be more," he said, eyes serious. Panic surged. I'd thought this was just an escape, not something building toward permanence. But before I could respond, my phone buzzed. A text from my husband. "Miss you? Early night in?" Innocent, but it shattered the illusion. I dressed quickly, mumbling excuses, and left, tears blurring the road. That night, as I slipped into bed beside my sleeping husband, I realized the depth of the mess. I'd assumed I could control it, compartmentalize, but emotions don't work that way. The unexpected part. The next morning, over breakfast, my husband looked at me oddly. "You seem distant lately. Everything okay?" I nodded, but inside I crumbled. Little did I know, he'd found a receipt from the coffee shop in my purse weeks ago, and had been quietly piecing things together, waiting for me to come clean. The suspense built in silence, unspoken suspicions hanging like fog. The days following that hotel encounter were a blur of feigned normalcy. I'd wake up early, make coffee for both of us, and chat about the weather or weekend plans as if nothing had changed. My husband would kiss me goodbye, his lips lingering a second longer than usual, and I'd smile, ignoring the knot in my stomach. At school, I'd lose myself in lectures on symbolism and literature, drawing parallels to my own life that I couldn't share with anyone. Alex kept texting, pushing for more meets, but I spaced out my responses, claiming busyness. The thrill had soured into anxiety. Every notification made me jump, worried it was him. Or worse, my husband confronting me. I started noticing small things. How he'd glance at my phone when it lit up, or ask casual questions about my day that felt probing. Paranoia set in. Had he seen something? Heard a late-night call? One afternoon, after dismissing my last class, I sat at my desk, staring at a stack of ungraded quizzes. The room was quiet, sunlight filtering through the blinds, casting stripes on the floor. I pulled out my journal, a habit from college I'd revived lately, and wrote about the confusion. Loving my husband but craving the intensity with Alex. It was raw, pages filled with doubts and desires, a confessional I hid in my desk drawer at home. That evening we had friends over for a barbecue in the backyard. The grill sizzled with burgers and veggies, laughter echoing as we played cards under string lights. My husband was in his element, flipping patties and refilling drinks. his arm around me possessively at times. Our friends, a couple we'd known for years, teased us about being the perfect pair. I laughed along, but inside it stung. Perfection was a facade cracking under pressure. After they left, as we cleaned up, he turned to me in the kitchen, dish towel in hand. That was fun. We should do it more. I agreed, and for a moment it felt genuine. We made love that night, slow and tender, and I clung to him, tears pricking my eyes. Maybe this was salvageable. Maybe the affair was just a wake-up call. But life has a way of complicating intentions. A few days later, Alex showed up at the school parking lot after hours. I admit, my heart sank. Students were still milling about, teachers leaving. I ushered him into my car, driving to a secluded spot by a riverbank. He poured out his feelings, how I made him feel alive again, how he wanted to leave his solitary life for something real with me. It was flattering, terrifying. What about my marriage? I asked, voice shaking. He shrugged. You deserve happiness. We argued softly, me defending my life, him challenging it. In the heat of it, we ended up kissing, passion overriding sense. Right there in the front seat like reckless teenagers. Guilt crashed over me on the drive home. I stopped at a grocery store, wandering aisles aimlessly, picking up milk and bread we didn't need. At checkout, the cashier, an older woman with kind eyes, asked if I was okay. I nodded, but tears welled up. Back home, my husband was cooking stir-fry, the aroma filling the house. He hugged me from behind, and I nearly broke. The emotional depth hit hardest in quiet moments. I'd reflect on our history. The miscarriage early in our marriage that we'd never fully grieved, how it had created distance. His long hours at work, leaving me alone. My own unfulfilled dreams of writing a novel. Sidelined for stability. Alex represented possibility, but at what cost? Rising tension built as I tried to end it. I texted Alex, "This has to stop." He called immediately, pleading. We met one last time at a park bench, tears flowing. "I love you," he said, the words hanging heavy. I didn't reciprocate, but didn't deny the pull either. Walking away, I felt lighter, until I got home and found my husband sitting in the living room, my journal open on the coffee table. He'd found it while looking for a pen. Pages of my confessions stared back. His face was pale, eyes red. "How long?" he asked quietly. I collapsed onto the couch, sobbing, spilling everything. No shouting, just raw pain. He listened, then stood, saying he needed space. He slept on the couch that night, the dog whining between us. The next morning, over cold coffee, we talked. He admitted he'd suspected for weeks, even followed me once to the coffee shop but turned back, not wanting to believe it. The psychological nuance was brutal. His trust shattered, my self-loathing peaking. We decided on counseling, a last-ditch effort. But as we scheduled the appointment, I wondered if love could mend what betrayal had broken. Counseling started the following week, in a neutral office with soft lighting and tissues on the table. The therapist, a middle-aged woman with a calm demeanor, guided us through exercises. Sharing feelings without blame. Rebuilding communication. My husband opened up about his fears, of losing me, of our life unraveling. I confessed my restlessness, how the affair stemmed from feeling invisible. It was excruciating, peeling back layers of resentment and unmet needs. At home, we navigated awkward silences. He'd cook dinner, I'd set the table, and we'd eat while discussing safe topics like work or the dog. Intimacy was off limits. He needed time. I threw myself into writing, drafting short stories late at night, channeling emotions into fiction. Alex stopped contacting me after I blocked his number, a clean break that left a void but also relief. One evening, after a session where we discussed forgiveness, my husband suggested a weekend getaway to a cabin in the woods. To reconnect, he said. I agreed, hopeful. We drove in our sedan, radio playing soft tunes, talking about memories. Our first date at a fair winning stuffed animals. Lazy Sundays in bed. The cabin was rustic, with a fireplace and views of trees. We hiked trails, held hands tentatively, and that night, by the fire, we kissed. Hesitant at first, then deeper. But reality intruded. On the drive back, my phone buzzed with a withheld number. It was Alex, using a friend's phone. I miss you, he whispered. I hung up, heart racing, deleting the call log. My husband glanced over, sensing tension, but said nothing. Guilt resurfaced, eroding the progress. Back home, tensions simmered. He found an old text I'd missed deleting, leading to a quiet argument. How can I trust you? He asked, voice breaking. I had no answer, just apologies. We continued therapy, but doubts lingered. I reflected on my actions, the selfishness, the hurt inflicted. Deep down, I realized the affair wasn't just about excitement. It was escaping my own dissatisfaction with life. A plot twist came midweek. During lunch at school, a colleague mentioned seeing my husband at a cafe with a woman, laughing, close. I brushed it off as a client, but seeds of doubt planted. That night, I asked casually. He said it was an old friend from college, catching up. Relief washed over, but suspicion festered. Was he seeking revenge? Or genuine connection? I started paying attention. Longer work hours, vague explanations. One evening, he came home smelling faintly of perfume. From the office, he claimed. Paranoia mirrored my own past deceit. In therapy, I confronted him. He denied anything, but his eyes shifted. The emotional depth deepened. Now I tasted the betrayal I dished out. We pushed through, planning small acts of kindness, notes in lunch bags, surprise walks with the dog. But unpredictability struck when Alex reappeared. He emailed me at work, apologizing, saying he'd moved on but needed closure. I ignored it, but it stirred old feelings. Then, during a family visit, my parents came for dinner. My husband was distant, checking his phone. After they left, I snooped while he showered, finding texts from Sarah, flirty, arranging meets. My world tilted. Confronting him, he admitted, after discovering my affair, he'd connected with her online, seeking validation. It hadn't gone physical, but emotional lines blurred. We both cried, the hypocrisy stinging. We're even, he said bitterly. But it wasn't. It compounded the pain. In that moment, we decided on a trial separation. Him staying with a friend, me alone in the house. The dog went with him, leaving silence echoing. Alone, I reflected. Our marriage, once solid, now fractured by mutual mistakes. Psychological nuances emerged. How hurt breeds hurt? How communication fails under pressure. I journaled furiously, processing the chaos. Weeks passed in solitude. I focused on teaching, grading with renewed vigor, finding solace in students' growth. Friends checked in, offering support without judgment. One night, walking the empty house, I realized personal growth. I didn't need external validation. Fulfillment came from within. My husband called occasionally, updates turning to deeper talks. We met for coffee, neutral ground, sharing regrets. Hope flickered. Maybe we could rebuild wiser. The separation stretched into months, a limbo of self-discovery and tentative reconnections. I redecorated the house slightly, new curtains, a reading nook, making it mine. Work became an anchor. I volunteered for after-school clubs, mentoring kids on writing, drawing from my own emotional well. Evenings, I'd cook simple meals, eat on the porch, watching sunsets, reflecting on how I'd let resentment build unchecked. My husband and I met weekly, first at cafes, then walks in parks. Conversations evolved, from blame to understanding. He admitted the emotional affair was a reaction, not excuse, and ended it cleanly. I shared how Alex represented escape, not love. Therapy continued individually, then jointly, unpacking childhood patterns. My fear of stagnation from a stagnant parental home, his from abandonment after his father's early death. One unpredictable event shifted everything. A health scare. I twisted my ankle badly during a jog, ending up in the ER. He rushed over when I called, staying through x-rays and bandaging. In the waiting room, under fluorescent lights, we talked honestly, no filters. "I don't want to lose you," he said. Tears flowed. I echoed the sentiment. Post-recovery. He moved back gradually. Weekends first, then full-time. We set boundaries. Open phones, regular check-ins. Intimacy returned slowly, built on trust. We traveled. A road trip to mountains, no agenda. Just us rediscovering joy in small things. Roadside diners, stargazing. But life isn't tidy. Alex contacted once more, via LinkedIn of all places, congratulating a work milestone he'd seen online. I replied politely, closing the door firmly. My husband knew, and we discussed it calmly. No drama. Emotional depth peaked in quiet reflections. I wrote a personal essay about growth through mistakes, submitting it anonymously to an online forum. Responses poured in. Shared stories of infidelity, recovery, some endings. It validated the messiness of human relationships, no villains, just flawed people navigating. Our marriage transformed, more intentional, with date nights and honest talks. We adopted another dog, a playful pup, symbolizing new beginnings. Challenges arose, work stress, family visits, but we faced them together. Tools from therapy helping. A final twist. Years later, at our 15th anniversary dinner in a cozy restaurant, he revealed he'd considered divorce during separation, but chose fight over flight. I confessed lingering doubts, but commitment won. We toasted to resilience, knowing perfection is illusion, but effort real. Looking back, the affair was a catalyst, painful but pivotal. It forced confrontation with selves, strengthening bonds. Raw emotions, guilt, love, fear, wove our story. A testament to plausible human frailty and redemption. Life's unpredictable. One choice ripples, but with nuance, healing follows. The separation stretched into months, a limbo of self-discovery and tentative reconnections. I redecorated the house slightly, new curtains and soft blues, a cozy reading nook with pillows and a lamp, making the space feel like mine rather than ours. Work became my anchor. I volunteered for after-school writing clubs, mentoring teenagers on crafting personal essays, drawing from my own turbulent emotions to guide them. Their stories of family conflicts and first loves mirrored my reflections, reminding me that struggle is universal. Evenings alone were introspective. I'd cook simple meals like stir-fried vegetables with rice, eating on the back porch while watching the sun dip below the horizon, painting the sky in oranges and pinks. The quiet allowed me to process how I'd let small dissatisfactions accumulate into justification for betrayal. How my husband's steadiness, once comforting, had felt suffocating because I hadn't communicated my needs. Journaling became daily, pages filled with raw admissions, helping me unpack the psychological layer. The thrill of novelty versus the depth of shared history. My husband and I met weekly at first, in neutral spots like coffee shops with worn booths and the hum of espresso machines. Conversations started stilted, recapping weeks, but evolved into deeper territory. Regrets, what ifs. He admitted the emotional affair with Sarah was a knee-jerk response to pain, a way to feel desired when he felt rejected. He'd ended it abruptly, blocking her, focusing on self-improvement through gym routines and reading books on relationships. I shared how Alex had filled a void of excitement, but ultimately highlighted my own unaddressed ambitions, like pursuing that novel I'd shelved. Individual therapy helped. Mine delved into childhood patterns, growing up in a home where emotions were suppressed, leading to my avoidance of conflict. His explored abandonment fears from losing his father young, making trust fragile. Joint sessions rebuilt bridges, with exercises like writing letters to each other, mine apologizing for the hurt, his expressing love despite it. One unpredictable event shifted the trajectory. A health scare on my end. Jogging a familiar trail one morning, I twisted my ankle badly on a route, pain shooting up my leg. Hobbling to my car, I called him from the ER parking lot. He arrived breathless, staying through the wait, x-rays showing a sprain, and bandaging. In the sterile waiting room, under harsh fluorescent lights, we talked without filters. "I don't want to lose you for good," he said, voice cracking. Tears streamed down my face. I echoed the sentiment, realizing isolation had clarified priorities. Post-recovery, with me on crutches, he helped around the house, cooking, laundry, without being asked. It felt like courtship renewed. He moved back gradually. Weekends first, sleeping in the guest room, then full-time. We set ground rules, open access to phones, weekly check-ins on feelings, no secrets. Intimacy returned tentatively, a handhold turning to a kiss, building to more, grounded in emotional connection. But healing wasn't linear. Alex contacted once more, via a professional networking site, congratulating me on a school award he'd seen posted online. The message was polite, wistful. I showed my husband immediately. We discussed it calmly, no accusations. I replied briefly, wishing him well and closing the chapter. Emotional depth culminated in shared vulnerabilities. I submitted an anonymous essay to an online forum about navigating infidelity from the cheater's perspective. Raw. Confessional, detailing guilt, excitement, aftermath. Responses flooded. Stories of recovery, divorces, ongoing struggles. It connected me to a community, validating that relationships are messy, influenced by psychological nuances like attachment styles and unmet needs. Our marriage transformed into something intentional. We instituted regular date nights, picnics in parks with sandwiches and thermoses of tea, or movies at a local theater with popcorn. We traveled, a spontaneous road trip to rolling hills, staying in bed and breakfasts. No strict plans, just wandering trails and stargazing on clear nights. Challenges persisted, his work deadlines causing stress, my grading marathons leading to fatigue, but we addressed them proactively, using therapy tools like active listening. A final plot twist unfolded at our 15th anniversary. Over dinner in a dimly lit restaurant with cloth napkins and candlelight, he revealed during the separation he'd consulted a lawyer about divorce, but tore up the papers, choosing to fight. I confessed occasional lingering doubts, flashes of what-ifs with Alex. But commitment outweighed them. We toasted with wine glasses clinking, to resilience and growth. Reflecting now, the affair was a painful catalyst, forcing us to confront flaws and rebuild stronger. Raw emotions, guilt's weight, love's persistence, fear's grip. Woe narrative, a plausible tale of human error and redemption. Life's events are unpredictable, but with effort and nuance, bonds can endure, deeper for the scars.